Welcome to week 5 of the Bill Nees's Coaches Show. I'm your host, Chip Hare. With me, of course, is Coach Bill Nees. And Coach, before we go into talking about Fairborn, let's rewind and talk about what was a very tough game Friday night at Northmont. The Indians fall 21-13 in a strange game. From your perspective, the Indians certainly, it was a game that we controlled, and you look at the stats, we had more yards. We just fell short on the scoreboard.
We did, and I think when we went back and looked at the film, I think a lot of the things that we did, both offensively and defensively, we can blame ourselves. I know Northmont had a great plan and they did some good things well, but I think in the overall scheme of the things, there was 2 or 3 things that that we did that we necessarily don't normally do. We had too many mistakes. There was a couple questionable penalties. That that is what it is in high school football. But I think overall we've got to we're at the point right now where we're really balanced out, and we've either got to get better, and if we don't get better at doing the little things, then that means that we're getting worse. And we've plateaued up enough, and we got to now start stacking over on that getting better side and just eliminate all the little things that are adding up to big things once Friday night comes.
We talk about, you talk about penalties, and we have not talked a lot on this show about stats. We haven't pulled out stat sheets, but a stat that you look at Friday night that glares at you. First of all, the officials called between the two teams. There were 23 penalties called, 12 on Piqua, 11 on Northmont. We had over 130 yards in penalties. Those, and you talk about mistakes, those are the things that really can set you back, and really did set us back Friday night.
And it's a double-edged sword, because you look at the thing and you say, okay, that was a mistake, that was something that we need to correct. Then on the other hand, it's really hard to get into that gray area where you look at the film and it wasn't a mistake. You didn't do anything, but you still have to pay the price. And in the long run, that's occasionally what we had to do, and that's what Northmont had to do. I mean, there was a lot of penalties, and as I mentioned on Friday night, I said if you look at the average of both these teams, were 2 of the least penalized teams in the GWAC, and there seems to be a lot of stuff going on.
The amount of strange things that happened in that game from the time we, even on a kickoff or a punt, where they drop a punt, that goes back 5-7 yards, he wheels around and ends up finding a way, getting in the end zone,
roughing the kicker.
Yeah, and now we ended up getting a good deal out of that on the short end because we got a shorter field. But it was a strange night. But those are nice that as you talk about adversity, we've got to, when you're on the field, it's not like NFL. They can't reverse the play. They can't go up in the they can't go up in the press box and take a look at it and say, hey, we're going to reverse that. Yeah. As I'm sure you guys talk to your team, hey, we got to deal with those things and we got to move forward.
Yeah, you do, and you have to, and you have to understand that you can't self-diagnose during the game. In other words, if you even though you're positive, this, okay, the game's gone on. There's already another play coming up, and I learned that a lot early in my career. That if you dwell on stuff, the next thing you know, the other team's coming out of the huddle, and you're not ready for that next play. So you have to pick your chances, pick your times where you're going to do it. But a lot of times you don't have time. You just got to hit it and move. And what happens is what happens.
Hit and move. We moved to week 5, Fairborn, in what is a very important game for the Indians. We're 2-2. Obviously, we want to keep that winning record moving. Particularly as we go into division play. Talk a little bit about the Skyhawks and what the Indian fans might be able to see Friday night.
Well, they're a wide-open football team, and they've got a lot of playmakers. We went down there last year, and it was 7-7 for the longest time, and then it was 14-14. And at halftime, we came back and scored 2 big touchdowns in the second half and put it away. But it's a team. Fairborn is always the team that is underrated by a lot of people. They've got great players. They got a great coaching staff. And they always seem to be able to put the scare into a lot of people, and sometimes are not able to finish. And I think what we have to do is we got to make sure that they don't get a chance to even put the scare in us, that we've got to come out from the start. And I don't think we did that last year, and we've talked already 2 straight days about that we came out with the idea that and the same thing happened last year. We played, a great Urbana team, playoff team, great St. John's, we had a great game against Lima Senior, great game against Northmont, all these big schools, and then here comes 1-3 Fairborn, same as last year, and we can't have that natural letdown that high school guys, are going to try to have. that all of a sudden things are going to be a little easier for us because of that record, and they're not. Because Fairborn practices hard. They've got some great players. Like I said, they've got a receiver that's caught for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. And I reminded everybody that same kid hit us for a touchdown last year. They've got that. They've got a solid defense. They're well coached. And so we've got to gear ourselves up one more time, to get this thing done.
We talk about gearing up, and you use that word. I'll use the word energy. That was probably the one thing that we saw a difference between maybe week 3 and week 4, is our energy wasn't as high against Northmont maybe as it was against Lima. What I'm hearing you say is we've got to come out with that energy against Fairborn, because we've got to get excited. We've got to be. You and I have had this conversation, I think once here on camera and several times behind camera, that our team has an edge to it. We've got good chemistry, and we also come out with a lot of enthusiasm. When we play with enthusiasm, we play with energy, and we got that edge to us, we're a pretty good football team. When we don't have that, and I thought Friday night there were some times when we just didn't have, we came out a little flat, we're average.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about with on our weekly, on our Monday meeting. The opening page 1 featured something called self-diagnosing during games. And I mentioned it earlier, and that's what happened to us. We were down a little bit to start. And usually at Lima Senior, we started out 12-0, but then good things happened to us. Well, we got down to Lima at Northmont, and we were still waiting. We started to wait for good things to happen instead of making good things happen. And then we started self-diagnosing that this is the reason why it's not happening, that maybe our line's not blocking well enough, maybe our special teams aren't doing this, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. And in the meantime, while we're doing all this self-diagnosing, we're not playing. And we've got to understand that we just need to go play. And then all of a sudden, when there's a bunch of zeros on the clock, we look at the scoreboard, and then we decide what the issue is going to be. And so I really think that that's part of the enthusiasm. That's part of the energy level, that you can't sit back. It's nothing more than you're running a race. You don't have time to look behind you. You don't have time, whatever cliche you want to use. You can't take the oars out of the water. Yeah. Whatever the case may be, stop flapping your wings. It's all the same deal. The self-diagnosis is when you stop, and as soon as you start doing that, then the energy is not moving forward.
Coach, you mentioned their coaching staff and their head coach has been around a long time. He's been a couple different places, and obviously he's well respected within the Miami Valley. Talk a little about Toby.
Or, Roy's an excellent football coach, and he has that situation in Fairborn where you have 5 or 6 kids that are on the team this year, and the bad news is those 5 or 6 kids may not be on the team next year, because of transfers, because of the base and stuff like that. But then the good news sometimes is you've got 5 new kids coming in that are pretty good. So he's constantly in a little bit of a transition, and he does a great job of taking every year what he has and developing an offense and defense that's conducive for those players. Last year, the offense is a little bit different than it is this year. The defense is a little different. And he doesn't sit back and say, okay, this is what we're going to do every year no matter what. He adapts what he wants to do, with what his players can do, and he really does a great job for the position he's in.
We've talked about our Indians, and a lot of them, our audience has gotten to know our seniors, and we talk a lot about the Noah Lymans and the Rupert Delacruz, who we're going to meet here shortly. And we have, of course, Al Nees, and the list goes on, a good number of seniors that we have. We've also got a good number of juniors and some other younger players that have really come up and stepped up and had a big game. Mr. Hawk had a nice game Friday night. We're in the reception. Yeah. Mr. Shrub, so and obviously Darian, Mr. Tips Clemens, there are different people that have stepped up, and there's young people that really have gained a great deal of experience. And as we're coming in the midway part of the season, that's really important.
I think it is. And one of the biggest kept secrets outside of here, but inside we rev them up pretty good, is our kickoff team. And our kickoff team consists of 5 sophomores and 5 juniors. And those guys get down the field 2 weeks in a row. They've held the opponent inside the 20-yard line every single kickoff. Now we've got to make sure we get that same type of athletic effort on our punt team, but that's a different group of people because those guys are a little older and they have to block and things like that. But those guys are great. We've got probably 2 of the bigger defensive games this week against Northmont were 2 sophomores, Derek Height and Ben Smeezing. outstanding players, and both those guys gave us great effort, played a position as well as we've had people playing a while. So yeah, we've got a great blend of that senior leadership, juniors, and then we've got 4 or 5 sophomores that are playing for us, not because we have to play them, but because they're that good. They forced their way in.
The Indians will open up, will finish a crossover game here at Fairborn, and then we'll open up division play in week 6. But hard to believe as we get close to week 5 that we're going to say we're almost halfway through the season.
It is, and it's one of the things I constantly preach about and that is you got to make sure that every week you're ready, because you only get 10 chances to get the 11th chance. And you know, I'm in there with those guys and all the other coaches. We're in there in December, January, February, snowy, in the weight room, doing all this stuff, and we're doing this. It's just scary because you do all this stuff, you put all this time in just for this 10-week spot. And you got to make sure that every week you're as jacked as you can. You've ate right, you've slept right, you've done everything. Taken your vitamins, doing everything you have to do, and be ready to play on Friday night.
Well, it's almost, if you use the poker analogy, it's like you're getting all your poker chips from December all the way up until August, and you come to the table in August and you want to have the right poker chips, so you play those things right, and you just hope when you play the chips right that things fall into place.
Yeah, and it's just amazing, and how fast everything goes, and it's no matter what happens. Somebody will say, "Wow, it just seemed like we're in 2 days last week. Just seemed like it was picture day. Just seemed like this," and that's the case. And I keep trying to make sure everybody understands it. Enjoy it. Because this is a great football team, it's a great group of kids, great chemistry, and I love every day I come here, and hopefully they do too. But we also have to, at this point, get better.
You can tell you enjoy it, Coach, and we'll talk more in the next coming weeks, because I can remember you and I having conversations behind camera about weeks 6 and 7. And how it gets the middle of the year, you start getting a little tired mentally and physically, but week 6 and 7 oftentimes can be those 2 weeks that make or break your season and get you over the hump.
It's just like in a football game coming out of halftime, right at the beginning of that third quarter, probably 80% of games that are going to be close, 80% of those games are won or lost right there in that third quarter, and they end up to be a 28-7 game. How many times have we seen 28-7? And it always happened right in the third quarter. There's some games that are always going to be blowouts. Some games are going to be close into the fourth quarter, like a Lima Senior game. But usually 7 out of 10 games are just right there, and somebody's going to make a couple mistakes, and then bang, it's over.
Well, we are going to close out the first half of this season right here at Alexander Stadium against the Fairborn Skyhawks, and a game, Coach, that I know we'll be ready to go and ready to fly.
We will.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to the second half of the Bill Nees Show, where we're going to meet our quarterback, Rupert Delacruz, and we're going to get in the head of the quarterback and what is he really thinking when that ball snapped. Stay right there. Welcome back to the second half of the Bill Nees Coaches Show. With us is our quarterback, Rupert Delacruz. And Rupert, welcome, first of all, to our Coaches Show. And he just informed me that he did an interview with WDTN, so he's well in practice for this. Rup, tell us a little bit about, we're heading into week 5. We're almost halfway through the season. What's it been like for you? We're 2-2, obviously, going into what is probably a very big game for us. It is a big game for us on Friday to stay on the winning side. Yeah. What's the season been like for you?
I was like, the first 2 games is obviously up, and the last 2 games were, obviously Lima Senior was a heartbreaker, but we just got to get back on track. We have our goals, and this week's very important.
You said something that I think sets a lot of people have made this comment I've heard in the community is the Lima game. You said it was a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I noticed after that game, standing outside the locker room, there was a different feel from that game after that loss than maybe a loss you might have had against Northmont or any other years in the past. Describe what that loss to Lima was, what that felt like.
It sucked. That's the words. But It's because we could beat them when we know we could beat them. I'm telling you right now, if we had another chance, we could get them. And it's because they're a really good football team, and we know that we're a good football team. We know we can beat them. So that's why it hurts so bad.
When you look at our team, and you say we're 2-2, and Lima was a game that certainly could have been a game we could have won if the ball goes a certain way. Northmont, another game where we probably felt like we had our chances to win in that game too. We're a pretty good football team. You know, you look at our record, you say 2-2. What do you think of our football team?
I think it's better than 2-2. I think it's so much better than 2-2 because last year at this point we were 2-2, and we had our heads down. But I know this team, it's the confidence is so much better and the chemistry is so much better. We don't get down on each other, and the chemistry is so good. Like, it's been a while since I've been around a team like this.
There is no question the chemistry on this team is very good. You guys have a little bit of an edge to you. Coach Nees and I have talked about that, a little bit of an attitude, and not a bad one. One that has a lot of good energy, and I feel, and as I know Coach does too, that energy really kind of transcends the field, and it kind of gives you a leg up, I guess, and it's another strength of ours that some teams just don't have.
Yeah. Like our team, when something goes bad, Coach Nees always talks about adversity and all that. Most teams, they get down, they just curl up into a ball. But this team, we just go. We go through it. We fight through it. We don't get mad at each other like most teams. We fight through it.
Let's talk a little about you as a quarterback. There's a lot of responsibility to being the quarterback. There's a lot of perks to the job, too, being quarterback. For you, what does being quarterback for the Piqua Indians mean to you?
It honestly means a lot. Like, it's been a dream. Like, I'm honestly still getting used to it from last year. And like, when we were little, like playing Pee Wee and all that, we always look up to the kids. Like, especially with Justin here, that helps a lot because he's the Piqua quarterback and he helps me out a lot. And I always look up to him.
When you talk about your younger years and Coach Hem now we call him, Justin was a quarterback. Of course, they won the state championship when he was a junior, and of course he had great success as probably one of the more heralded quarterbacks that's come through the program. What's that like to say, hey, you got someone on the sideline that you can go over to and not just hey, what am I doing wrong, but just kind of rub shoulders with and get some confidence from?
I like him on the team. I actually love it because he knows where I am, where like mentally and physically, like on the field, and he knows like if something goes wrong, he knows how I'm thinking. He knows everything, and I'm not sure if it sounds good or not, but I'm trying to impress him the whole time. You know what I'm trying to say? And
sure.
Because he's that guy. He's all the way up here.
He's your model.
Yeah, he's that guy.
It's neat to have a guy that you look up to and a guy who's kind of was being your childhood role model, so to speak, on the coaching staff. But there's a tradition that he brings, and there's been a lot of people beyond him that brings. Talk a little about the tradition of Piqua football and what that means to you and what you know about it.
It's great from what I know, and it's the Troy game. That's probably the greatest thing ever because not any team could say, "Oh, we have the oldest rivalry," and honestly, that game is great. I love it.
You beat me to the punch because I was going to ask you. I know Coach likes to talk about, hey, we take one game at a time when we've got Fairborn, and we don't want to look past them. But I guess I would ask you just to look just at the big grand scope of things. You said the Troy game.
Yeah.
Is that, in your mind, one of the biggest games? Is there another big game on that schedule that's important to you?
Yeah, every game's big. But this year, I think we look at it this way. Like, Troy game isn't our last game. We're looking for the playoffs, and we're looking to beat Troy and then just get in the playoffs. Like, because usually, Troy's the last game of the season. We're tired of that.
Our schedule is interesting because now we'll have one more game within what we call our GWA crossover game. Yep. And we will host the Skyhawks here Friday night at 7 o'clock here at Alexander Stadium. Then we go into division play. Yeah. First game is Vandalia Butler.
Yep.
I had a teammate of yours in my office this week, and he was talking about how important Vandalia is. He said, don't get me wrong, Troy's a big game, but Vandalia is an awful big one too.
Yeah, I hate them. We're supposed to hate Troy. I hate Troy, but Butler's up there. They're not. I hate them. And we have a chip on our shoulder from last year because we lost that game in the fourth quarter. We know we could have won, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a game we were up 2 touchdowns with less than 10 minutes to go, and we found ourselves just kind of reeling a little bit, but I would imagine that this year we have something to play for, even a little bit more than to pay back from last year.
Yep.
Two more quick things. Talk a little bit about Fairborn. What are some things that we can look for from your perspective on what we need to look for from Fairborn as a quarterback?
We're just going to do our thing. We're good at running the ball. We can get our passing game's a lot better than last year. So I think that if we just do what Coach always talks about, we do what we need to do better. And it's not like every team, like we watch film and everything, you know, and we try to strategize, but we just need to do what we do better.
Rupe, one more thing we like to talk about with we like to talk in terms of our seniors that we ask is, you know, what are you going to be doing a year from now? What are some of the plans that you have for graduation, and what schools maybe you might be looking at, and what are some of your plans?
I'm looking at Miami, and I'm thinking about being a, yep, I didn't plan it. I'm not sure if that question came, but I was looking to be a pediatrician or maybe a pediatric psychologist.
Okay. You can count on Rupert for a lot of things. One, you can count on your complete passion and desire to play. You can also catch your enthusiasm, not just at our games, but all of our other games too. So, Rupert, we really appreciate your enthusiasm, and we certainly wish you luck as we roll through the season in Week 5.
Thank you.
This concludes our show of the Bill Nees Coaches Show. Don't forget the ball game Friday night here at Alexander Stadium. It will be Fairborn and Piqua playing in Week 5, big one for the Indians. So come on out and catch us. It will be junior high night. For Rupert Delacruz, I'm Chip Hare. We'll see you next time.